Let me ask you something. When was the last time you made a simple decision quickly without second-guessing yourself even once? If you're struggling to remember, this video is for you. Because here's something that almost nobody talks about. The smarter you are, the more trapped inside your own head you might actually be. And that's not an insult. That's neuroscience. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why your brilliant mind keeps working against you, and more importantly, what you can actually do about it. So why do smart people overthink everything? The answer starts in the brain. Researchers at SUNY Downstate Medical Center discovered something fascinating. Patients diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder often scored higher on tests measuring verbal intelligence. A separate study published in the journal Personality and Individual Differences found that verbal intelligence directly correlated with worry and rumination. In plain terms, the sharper your mind, the more material it has to spin. Here's why. When you're highly intelligent, your brain doesn't just see option A and option B. It sees every potential consequence, every possible scenario, every risk attached to every outcome, all at the same time. That's genuinely impressive processing power. But when you need to make a decision, that same power becomes a trap. Psychologists call it analysis paralysis, and it's one of the most common struggles for analytical high-functioning minds. Neuroscience gives us an even deeper picture of what's happening. Analysis paralysis occurs when the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, your brain's executive decision-making center, gets stuck in a recursive evaluation loop. It keeps demanding more data, more certainty, more simulation. And here's the cruel part. For any decision with real complexity, 100% certainty is simply impossible. So the loop never resolves. The brain just keeps spinning. A landmark 2017 study in the Journal of Abnormal Psychology added another layer to this. People who scored high on perfectionism measures showed significantly larger brain responses, not just to actual errors, but to possible errors. Their brains were literally treating uncertainty itself as a mistake. So every time a smart overthinker gets close to a decision without absolute certainty, a neural alarm goes off. More evidence needed, more analysis required. And telling a chronic overthinker to just decide is, as one neuroscientist put it, about as useful as telling someone with an overactive smoke detector to just ignore it. Now, perfectionism plays a huge role here, and this is where it gets personal for a lot of people. Research from York University found a direct correlation between perfectionism and intelligence. Highly intelligent individuals often exhibit strong perfectionist tendencies, and that perfectionism doesn't stay confined to big life decisions. It seeps into everything. The email you've rewritten 4 times, the text message you're still drafting, the plan you won't execute because it's not quite ready yet. You might spend hours refining something that others would consider more than good enough, not because you're being difficult, but because your mind genuinely sees room for improvement that others simply cannot. And then there's the emotional dimension. Highly intelligent people tend to be deeply introspective and emotionally sensitive. They feel things intensely and process emotions on a profound level. That emotional richness fuels creativity and insight. But it also means more time spent replaying conversations, overanalyzing reactions, and worrying about how others perceive them. The result is a kind of double overthinking. You're not just thinking about the situation, you're thinking about your thinking about the situation. Chronic overthinking also has a very real physical cost. Research from the University of Michigan has shown that chronic rumination is linked to higher levels of cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. Over time, elevated cortisol can weaken the immune system, disrupt sleep, and significantly increase the risk of anxiety and depression. So this is not just a mental inconvenience, it's a genuine health concern. But here's what I want you to hear clearly. Overthinking is not a fixed personality trait. It is a mental habit. And like any habit, it can be reshaped. The key is knowing what actually works, because well-meaning advice like just stop thinking about it can actually backfire. Psychologist Daniel Wegner identified something called ironic process theory, which shows that actively trying to suppress a thought makes it come back stronger. So fighting your thoughts directly is often the worst strategy. So what does work? The first and most important shift is learning to distinguish rumination from genuine problem solving. Psychologists are clear on this distinction. True problem solving is finite. You define a problem, consider your options, choose a path, and act. Rumination is open-ended and repetitive. It keeps turning the same stone over without moving forward. It feels productive. It isn't. The moment you can label what you're doing as rumination, rather than solving, you've already broken part of the loop. The second strategy is cognitive diffusion, a technique from acceptance and commitment therapy. Instead of fusing with your thoughts and treating them as absolute truth, you learn to observe them from a slight distance. Instead of thinking I'm going to fail, you notice I'm having the thought that I'm going to fail. That tiny shift creates real psychological distance. Neuroscientific studies on this practice show it actually reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, and increases activation in areas linked to perspective taking. Over time, your thoughts start to feel more like passing clouds than fixed facts. And note third, schedule your worry. This sounds strange, but the research supports it powerfully. Rather than letting rumination run as a constant background buzz throughout your entire day, contain it. Give yourself a specific 10-minute window each evening dedicated to your worries. When anxious thoughts arise outside that window, simply postpone them. Studies show this practice reduces mental intrusion and gives overthinkers a genuine sense of control. And there's a bonus. By the time your worry window arrives, many of those urgent thoughts have already dissolved on their own. Fourth, use implementation intentions. Research published in Psychological Science found that when people plan in advance exactly what they'll do if a specific thought arises, they are significantly more likely to follow through on goals and far less likely to get stuck in indecision. For example, if I start spiraling about a conversation from earlier today, I will spend 5 minutes writing out what I actually want to communicate next time. You're redirecting energy from the mental loop into a concrete action. Fifth, mindfulness, and not just as a vague concept. Specifically, bringing your attention to the present moment through breath, sensation, or sound has been shown in multiple studies to significantly reduce rumination. Research shows that when people adopt an attitude of non-judgmental acceptance toward their present experience, they become measurably less likely to overthink. You're not clearing your mind, you're training it to rest before it circles back. And finally, self-compassion. Oh, this one is often the hardest for smart people, because the same high standards you apply to your work, you apply to your mind. When you catch yourself overthinking, the instinct is often frustration. Why can't I just stop? But research shows that reactions of judgment and self-criticism actually amplify the rumination loop. What breaks the pattern is curiosity and kindness. The shift from what's wrong with me to what is this trying to show me is small in words and enormous in impact. Your intelligence is not the problem. Your intelligence is one of your greatest strengths. But a powerful engine without steering can take you anywhere except where you want to go. The goal was never to think less. The goal is to think on purpose, to direct that remarkable mind toward clarity instead of circles, toward action instead of endless analysis. If this resonated with you, share it with someone you know who lives inside their own head a little too much. And if you want to go deeper into the psychology of the mind, hit subscribe because we explore these topics every week with real research and real warmth. Drop a comment below. What's the one situation where you find yourself overthinking the most? I genuinely love to hear from you.